Welcome to the Cleaning Up Business Podcast. My name's Chris Guilfoyle and I'm going to be your host. In every episode, we're hoping to bring you industry leaders from a wide variety of service sectors, disruptors within their industry, and day-to-day entrepreneurs with some business and life lessons for you guys to take away. Let's jump in to today's episode.
And I think that the industry has to kind of get better at the way we train and develop individuals.
What's the general consensus when you speak to young people and you mention the soft services, cleaning, FM industry?
In the end, I probably shouldn't say this, I got sacked. It was quite difficult to actually get the business off the ground. And we come together and created this training program. We would not have created this unless we could see a positive outcome for anyone that gets involved with it.
We've made a few bad hires in our time and you pay for it. Welcome back to another episode of the Cleaning Up Business Podcast with me, Chris Guilfoyle. Today, I'm fortunate enough to be joined by Michelle Brightly, co-founder at Ingage FM and the managing director at Bridge Recruitment, where I know you from for almost 20 years now.
Long time, yeah. I've been in this industry for 25 years. 25 years, maybe even 30 years, actually, maybe.
God, well, makes me feel young. So, we're going to jump in, have a chat with Michelle, all things about the cleaning and FM industry and recruitment as well. So, Michelle, as always, we go all the way back to the start of our guest. So, tell us a little bit about yourself before you got into the cleaning industry.
Okay, so...
Warts and all.
Well, it's a long history.
Let's do it.
So basically, I had my first child at 17 years of age. Okay. So at the same time...
That's not a record. We have had someone younger than that. 15,
really?
Wasn't it, lad? 15? Yeah, 15.
Oh, right. Oh, well, there you go.
So you're second place at the moment.
But obviously, education and qualifications just wasn't a priority. Building a good, stable life for my child and, my family was kind of key. And I was quite an ambitious person. I knew I wanted to do something, not quite sure what. So I fell into cleaning. You'll probably find that most people do fall into the cleaning industry. But what it offered me at the time was flexible working. I could actually, do some cleaning around looking after my son. And I learned firsthand, what a difficult job cleaning actually is. And I didn't take it very seriously. It was just a job. It wasn't great, pay. It was just something that I could use as part of my, building a life for myself. So actually, in the end, I probably shouldn't say this, but I got sacked. I was sacked.
What for? Come on, tell us the truth.
To be honest, I think it was because I didn't take it seriously.
Didn't enjoy it.
I didn't really enjoy it. It was such hard work for quite low rate of pay.
Yep.
And I didn't really see it as a career. It was more of a stopgap financially to give me what I needed.
I think when I started the industry, I was exactly the same preconceptions as you. I use it as a stopgap. It'll fill a gap till I find out what I want to do, whatever that may look like. And then here we are 25 years later.
I know, incredible. But what it did actually teach me, and it suddenly gave me a recognition that, a cleaning service has standards, and I didn't really see it like that before. And suddenly I fell into a role where I was recruiting for the industry, not frontline staff. I was recruiting for management. I was actually recruiting for the security industry as well.
A lot of similarities between the two, isn't there?
Yeah, I kind of fell into FM, but at a time when it wasn't really seen as FM. I also dealt with the catering industry as well. So I got some really good insight as to, what services made up an FM service, but this was a long time ago, so it wasn't actually facilities management. But it really did give me an opportunity to financially, change my whole life, and it actually gave me a bit of a passion to represent people that also wanted to develop their career and make a change for themselves. Yeah. So I started recruiting for a company called SSR.
Right.
And I think I was in my 20s when I actually left there. And this is quite a funny story in itself, because I'd always toyed with the idea of starting my own business. And I then had a set of twins. And in those days, you know, working from home, you know, this hybrid solution just wasn't an option. Yeah. I actually asked my boss if I could have that hybrid solution. If
so it's your fault everyone works from home.
It's my idea. And it wasn't an option. So I thought, right, I'm going to go to the Caribbean and I'm going to make up my mind as to whether I start my own business. If I do, you know, it's got to be successful. You know, I've got a reputation. I want to support people. So it was a big decision. So at the time, there was only one other agency that I used to come up against that I thought, you know what, they've got a great reputation. They're good at what they do. And that's a company called Metzger. So I'm sure you're familiar with Metzger. Yeah.
Are they still around?
They're still around, yeah. So I went to Dominican Republic, and it was only to think about starting my own business. And I got to know this girl who worked in recruitment. And after a week, I said, so who is it that you work for? And she said, oh, I work for Metzger. And I was like, right, you know, that's
what a small world.
That's my sign. You know, I'm a great believer that everything happens for a reason. Definitely. So yeah, I came back, started my business, and yeah, it went so well. It's very different starting your own business to working with, you know, what is quite a big company within the recruitment industry. You know, there was a huge learning curve that I didn't take into account. You know, all of a sudden your admin, your payroll, your everything, aren't you? You know, to run that business successfully, you've got to roll up your sleeves and get the job done.
Wear many different hats. How did you find that bridge between going from employed into running your own business? Did you find that difficult, or did you manage to get your pace and your feet underneath you relatively quickly?
I think I actually found that quite challenging. You know, I was always quite strong-willed, and I was always, you know, quite a difficult person to manage, you know, believe that or not.
I don't believe it.
I always had my own ideas, and I kind of always thought that my way was the right way. So it was always a bit of a challenge to manage. But at the time, you know, I didn't have childcare. So at the time I was running my business, I had my children literally, you know, in the front room. So I was just trying to juggle everything at the same time. So it was quite difficult to actually get the business off the ground. You know, and obviously, you know, you're restricted in terms of who you can approach. It wasn't so much a thing. I don't think my previous company thought that I would, you know, start my own business. Yep. So there wasn't much in a way of restrictions of who I could approach. But from a moral standing, you know, I just wanted to have a bit of pride that I've walked away from something and started completely afresh, you know. So I just started, you know, networking, approaching some clients, and it all started to fall into place. I got my fax machine.
You
know, my telephone fax machine. So
what made you, interestingly, obviously the field of recruitment, you could have gone into any profession or avenue that you wanted to go down. What made you want to stay in the they would call it soft services because we've got security, catering, etc. What made you want to stay in that soft services lane, considering that you maybe didn't enjoy the cleaning aspect of it? Is it just the people? That's the number one thing I'm in the industry for. The people in it are just relatable to me as a person.
100%. You know, I think people in the industry, you know, they're not, in those days, you know, they were individuals that, you know, didn't necessarily come from an educated background. Yep. You know, they hadn't come out of university and decided, right, that's the industry I want to be a part of. You know, I was representing people that had maybe come from a challenging background and were trying to build something in their life. And that for me was kind of what I represented. You know, I wanted a career. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to have a great living standard. So, you know, these individuals also wanted the same thing. And I think had I not gone into recruitment, I had have got my qualifications, which was my degree and A-levels, and I would have been a social worker. Okay. So the people element to me was actually really quite important. Yeah. You know, it was kind of a factor for me to build relationships, understand what people wanted out of their career, and actually what would matter to them. You know, what was going to keep them motivated, what was going to keep them engaged, not just a job.
Yeah.
It needs to be a career path,
Sure.
you know, and I think that that's what's kind of like led the way for us, because, you know, we've got great long-standing relationships. Some of the people that we dealt with then, we're still in touch with now, you know, and they come back to us each and every time they're ready to take a next step. So, you know, relationships and supporting individuals that kind of needed that positive representation was important to me.
You've been at Bridge, or you've founded Bridge, you know, many years ago. What was that entire journey like? How long did it take to scale to where you are now? Was that something that happened relatively quickly, or has it been a slow burning process over those 20 years?
It's difficult because, you know, once we started the business, it was going really well. And then you've got to think, right, okay, where do I invest?
Yep.
You know, technology was very different back then.
Of course.
You know, so I actually started a database through Excel, you know, so it was, and then all of a sudden, you know, technology started advancing. So we had to look at what was the best fit for our business, you know, where do we bring people in? You know, how are they going to add value? You've got to then target those individuals. You've got to make clear expectations so they know what's expected of them. You've got to motivate, manage. So there's a lot to take into account if you're going to upscale your business. And then we was doing so well. And 2008, obviously there was a recession, and recruitment is just always the industry that is going to have the biggest hit because no one's recruiting. So then you've just got to scale all the way back and then just keep your head above water, which is exactly what we did.
I just find the tenacity to keep with them, especially with them ups and downs. You mentioned off camera before we started about how sometimes you get in that lull of like, oh, I don't know if this is worth it or whatever it may be. How do you personally deal with those ups and downs of day-to-day business?
For me personally, I think I've got a very strong will. You know, I don't give up easily, you know.
That comes across in your personality, just so you
I'm quite strong-willed. And I think, you know, in the back of my mind, you know, I started this journey for a reason and I just can't give up. And it doesn't matter how long that journey is, you know, there's going to be bumps in the road. But, you know, I think you've got to be quite positive in your mindset and just remember why you started in the first place. You know, what is it that you do that's important? Why you're representing the industry, and if there's value and you still find passion in that, then you should stick to it. Yeah. You know, so it's quite demotivating. Let's be honest. You know, you're building a business and suddenly you've got to scale it all the way back again, and you don't know when that's going to pick up. So you've just got to keep your head above water. You know, just keep your staff motivated, keeping them engaged in terms of what it is that you're trying to achieve, why you're there, you know, and keep everyone working towards the same goal. So it's a lot, but, you know.
You sound like you enjoy it still.
I do. I love it still, you know.
So what does Bridge look like today?
So look, you know, we've come out of the pandemic,
Tough time.
Again, tough time for all industries, you know, but for me, you know, what makes me so proud of the cleaning industry and being associated with it is that, you know, we really kind of demonstrated our worth, you know, and we had the spotlight. And I've said it many a time, we had the spotlight. We've got to keep that spotlight, because if it wasn't for the cleaning service, you know, places would be shut down. You know, people wouldn't feel safe. You know, people wouldn't feel, you know, they could be a part of something that could jeopardize their careers, you know. So, you know, what we did as an industry, what FM did, you know, was incredible in terms of the workplace and getting people back and motivated and ultimately, you know, keeping their financial situation stable. So, you know, I think for me, you know, recruitment, yes, it's going to have its ups and downs. Again, I had to scale it all the way back in terms of, you know, the pandemic. I knew it was coming.
Of course.
And actually, it was quite a good thing because I'd been toying with the idea that, you know, becoming a remote worker could actually be a really good fit for my business. We were struggling to find people within the local area that we could recruit. Because you had that office function, you had that office space, getting people into the office, finding that talent on a local area wasn't always easy. So actually it kind of pushed me to think about my business differently. How could it work with, remote working? How would I manage those individuals? How would I keep them engaged? How do I monitor what they're doing? Are they feeling supported? So it kind of raised a lot of questions, but actually for me and Bridge, it was a great thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we invested in different technology, and we've got the plan. When it's the right time, we've got the plan to push forward.
So it sounds like you're a fan of working remotely. How do you manage your employees remotely and keep them engaged? Because like the office here, we used to have 5-6 desks in there. Everyone would come to the office. Pandemic pushed us to that working from home. And to be honest with you, it's never really come back. And I've several times contemplated, do I need the overheads of this office? Probably not operationally, because our business is done out on client side. How do you manage that and keep your employees engaged when they're working remotely?
So we've actually... we've got a great team and in terms of their motivation, they're all very well self-motivated and they manage themselves really well. It was a huge difference for them to suddenly work from home and they were skeptical about it. But I was like, look, we haven't really got a choice here. If we're going to continue as a business, you've got to get your head around it. And luckily they've got that strength of character to kind of trust what I'm saying and go with that. Then we looked at, okay, so if you are working from home, what do you need? What equipment do you need? What support are you going to need? Let's put that in place. And I think when you can show that you're considering all the factors related to working from home, people feel more comfortable in kind of, adapting to that way of working. Yeah. And it's worked really well. What we've had to do and what we wanted to do and what we noticed was actually quite a valuable part of our team dynamic is still coming together as a team. So what we did was have face-to-face meetings once a month. We'd come together and spend the day together. And we've actually decided that that's not enough. So we've now moved to every fortnight.
Okay.
And we have Teams meetings, so we're constantly in communication. That hasn't been compromised whatsoever. It's worked really well.
Yeah. And the team enjoy it. Do they enjoy it more now?
They love it.
Yeah, I bet they.
That's what they're telling me anyway.
Yeah. So on recruitment, this is the last bit I'm going to touch on in the recruitment piece. What do you look like? So for a soft service facilities person, be that catering, security, cleaning, whatever it may be, I suppose it might depend on the role, but what makes someone more recruitable from your perspective? What do you look for in that said person?
So I think, I've been in this industry for a long, long time, FM, cleaning, catering, security. And I think the way that people develop, has kind of changed. It's, we're in an industry where, you're not getting the graduates coming through the ranks, where they've got a certain skill set that they can adapt and tweak and move on to bigger things. It's about nurturing people. And I think that the industry has to kind of get better at the way we train and develop individuals. Years ago, it was a mop and bucket.
Yeah.
There was some standards, but there wasn't a huge amount of standards in place. BICS, I'm not sure when they started, but they were kind of the guru when it come to implementing a hygiene standard. But in terms of management, how do you develop into being a manager? There's very little out there to support that process. How do you go from being a hands-on individual work-wise to suddenly mentoring and managing and making sure that people are motivated and understand what the expectations are for their role? That's a huge challenge. And I think, in the industry, there isn't a huge amount in terms of training and development.
I'm trying to think back to when I was, and apart from internal in-house courses that, the company I worked for used to do. I don't think there was much externally, to be honest.
No, and even with internal training, you're then relying on the quality of the person that's training you.
Yeah, and that was debatable at times.
Well, there you go. If they've got terrible habits, then you're not really getting the best option in terms of credibility. Yeah. So I think, we need to be more aware of CPD. Do you know what CPD is?
Elaborate for the audience.
So it's continuous professional development.
Okay.
Ingage a CPD accredited, but basically it's a way that you as an individual, you can attend an event and you're not getting a qualification, but it's giving you some understanding of how a certain thing is done. Yeah. So for example, it could be, what the new technology is or the new innovation is for the industry, how it works, why it's been created, so it gives you a certain understanding. And I think I'm seeing more and more, individuals want to be developed. They want to move on to the next level, but, they're kind of in a position where they have to self-fund it.
Yep.
And look, it's understandable. Employers are in a difficult spot. We're out of the pandemic and, we've got, funding and maybe, financial concerns that we need to have as a priority. But I do believe that investing in your people is absolutely key, and showing them what the expectation is, giving them the tools to do the job and excel in that field.
Yeah.
I think it kind of falls down to training and development.
So that segues us nicely into, because we're both not a sucker for one business, we both decided to do two. So you also have 2.5 years ago, Ingage FM Training.
Yeah.
And I think you gave us a little bit of an insight into why that was started, but tell us a little bit about how that come about.
So for years, actually, I've recruited for the industry and I've seen, I say lack of talent. I think
sorry, Michelle, is that at all levels?
That's all
directors
levels
down to cleaning operatives?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been really difficult for employers to find the right salespeople. Maybe that's myself. Because actually they haven't got the right systems in place. They're not setting realistic targets. Maybe, they haven't got they haven't got a CRM in place, for example. How do you manage that performance? But I've seen for a long time their companies hemorrhage money where salespeople are concerned. But I also felt that actually, salespeople weren't always given the best deal. They would often go into a new environment. There'd be no induction plan. There'd be no training package. They know nothing about this organization. Yet all of a sudden, they're supposed to go out and sell and win a contract award with high profit margins, with very little information and tools to do the job. So, it was something that I've seen for a long time. There's an issue here. And, the individuals in the industry, because they're so sought after, are commanding a higher and higher salary. It's not always feasible for maybe SMEs, for example. Yep. What's the solution?
About that before we started, didn't we?
Yeah, look, absolutely. So what's the solution here? And Jasmine, during a pandemic, was in a situation where Jasmine Dell.
She's your business partner?
Yeah. So we created Ingage FM Training, like from scratch. And it was because Jasmine's got a passion for people. She's managed her own national team. She's recruited from inside the industry, outside the industry, and she understands the pain points of trying to develop a team to meet their targets. What will they come up against? How do you keep them motivated? And she's fantastic at training and getting people literally engaged. Suddenly her circumstances worked really well. And, I had a bit of time because obviously we was in a pandemic. Recruitment was maybe not as busy as what it should be. And we come together and we created this training program, which basically offers a solution for SMEs, and not just SMEs, companies of any size, because it gives a clear induction plan for a salesperson to come into a business. They understand what the sales process is relating to the cleaning industry. There's no grey area from cradle to grave. And on the basis of that, It's then just teaching that individual about the culture of the business, the unique selling points, all of the other things that is important when you're selling and representing a company. But it takes a huge weight off of that employer's shoulders to know that they understand, what the process is and what the expectations are.
How are you finding uptake? Because we know in the industry that I believe, this is my opinion, it's relatively secular in terms of you've got different organisations within the industry that have different self-interests. That's, that they're not non-profits, they're there for a particular reason, and they offer training. So has there been much resistance in the industry, or just has been welcomed?
I think it's incredible, because what we thought this solution would be for salespeople that just maybe are new to the industry, that needed a bit of guidance. We thought that's why it was designed, to support people coming into the industry.
That makes perfect sense as well, because we seem to have a lot of training at the bottom and nothing
there's
else
nothing
above that.
for salespeople,
sure.
and actually producing a cost for a cleaning service, for example, is quite complicated.
Definitely. If you're doing it on a big scale. And what I've generally found, there was a huge, in my earlier operational days, there was a huge disconnect between sales and ops. So what someone would go in and perceive that they should sell and how they would deliver that operationally, they'd have absolutely no idea. So there was that real disconnect. So you'd get a sales piece and they'd go, well, we sold this contract on X, and you're looking at the contract going, there's no way I'm delivering what we promised for that. So having that cohesion between the two is something that's much
absolutely
needed.
Yeah, and that's what I used to see. There was a complete disconnect between ops and sales. They couldn't work together, they didn't gel. And you can kind of understand why, because the salesperson is motivated by getting the contract award, under whatever circumstances, and the operations was then left to run this contract, which actually may not be viable.
Yeah.
So through delivering structured training to a salesperson, it gives them that credibility, it gives them that knowledge and understanding how to do it, but how to do it properly, and actually it creates a more kind of peaceful and environment across the team, because operationally, they can recognise there is value here and it is achievable. But actually, we designed this course to recruit people in the industry because there weren't enough salespeople with industry experience. So by offering this course, we were hoping that we could then look at services like waste, like pest control, and we could bring people into the contract cleaning industry and just kind of show them what the industry represents, and hopefully that would solve the crisis in terms of there being a lack of sales talent. But actually, what we've found is we're having so many operators coming through the course.
That's good.
It's amazing.
They want to take that. That just shows that, again, that they want to take that next step, doesn't it?
Well, it does. But commercially, they're with your clients day in, day out. They're having these conversations and they're upskilling. But actually, again, have they got the knowledge and the tools to actually approach the sales process? You'll find most operators go, I'm not a salesperson. Yeah. But it's not about sales. It's about being fully in the know as to what the expectations are, how you upsell a contract. Yeah. So we've had a huge number of operational management coming through. We've had marketing managers come through the course. It's been amazing. Yeah.
What are the number one skills that you look for in a person when they're looking to go into that sort of sales role with the skill? And what do you teach them? What are the key points you look for in that?
So I think you need to understand the industry, don't you? Ultimately, the industry that we represent is changing. We spoke a little bit about it earlier. Years ago, you'd put a bid together and it was all about the cleaning service. But now, you've got to talk about sustainability and innovations and what you're doing differently from your competitors. How are you treating your teams? Yeah, all of that is so incredibly important. And it should be important.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's basically, I think in terms of salespeople, I think that they need to understand the industry. They need to understand the pain points of not only the client, but also the operational teams, bring your operations person to a client meeting. That could be so beneficial because they'll pick up on things that you wouldn't necessarily as a salesperson. But, talking through the pricing structure, looking at a floor plan, how on earth do you create a cost just looking at a floor plan? So it talks about, our course trains on how to build a pipeline, how to create a bid, what needs to be talked about during that bid, how do you prepare for a presentation, how do you prepare for a site walk round. We'll have exercises, where, you're looking at a floor plan and you're assigning a cost to that floor plan under guidance.
Yeah, of course.
But I think what's really important as well, it takes everyone's learning ability into account. And I don't think many courses in the industry does that, So, for example, not everyone learns the same way.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we're supporting all individuals, because some people invest in this course themselves. Sometimes it's employer funded. But you've got to take into account everyone's style of learning so that they come out of the experience with as much knowledge and understanding as possible.
Yeah. I've always felt myself that, you've got to have a base understanding of the cleaning industry to really be able to come into it.
How can you relate to your client?
Yeah.
How can you relate? If you don't understand what you're selling, how on earth can you try and give that reassurance to the client that you're there to make a difference? Yeah.
And I say that's when you really got that big disconnect with sales and ops. In my day, it's probably better now. I don't really have that disconnect because we're an SME and I'm unfortunate enough I do the sales, and my other directors and management team, they're all operationally based. So we don't really have that disconnect, and I've been in the industry for 20 years. But as you say, people coming into it that are new. So we spoke off camera. The industry seems to struggle to attract talent at all varying levels for varying different reasons. How do we as an industry improve that? Now, we know the number one reason we do this content is to get people's stories like yourself out and, show the wider range of roles that come into the cleaning industry. How, in your opinion, from what you see it a slightly different angle to me, how do we get better at that as an industry, an FM industry?
Yeah, I think FM actually, does it really well. So, for example, I spent some time running a committee for IWFM. So that was the Rising FMs, the Institute of Workplace and Facilities Management. Yep. They did a really good job of interacting with those in education, for example, those at entry level. Yep. So there was a very clear pathway to, if you come into FM, this is how you can educate and develop yourself, So there was a very clear succession plan and route to personal development. Our cleaning doesn't have that, I don't think. No. There isn't much in the way of management training. You've got IOSH, for example. You can develop yourself in health and safety, but general management training, there isn't an awful lot of that. And that's something that myself and Jasmine are tackling. We're looking to bring new courses in and deliver workshops where, okay, it's not a qualification, but it will take you through the process of, for example, what does good customer service look like? That kind of thing. Yeah. But for me, I think, in my spare time, which there isn't an awful lot of that, but in my spare time, yeah, I have to make time. But I'm an enterprise advisor, so I work with an initiative that was led by the Lord Mayor, and that is basically working with 1,800 schools across London. And basically, in my experience, there aren't many careers advisors in schools. The public sector is underfunded, and many schools are struggling for their own talent. So if you're not supporting these kids in terms of giving them guidance and introductions as to what industries are out there, these kids are going to struggle. They're going to struggle with, like what opportunities are available to them. So I do an awful lot of work in terms of these kids, supporting these kids in schools. I've got a careers fair on the 27th. I'm helping with mock interviews, and I've got so many volunteers from the industry that are coming along and representing cleaning and FM, which is fantastic because it sows the seed. Yeah. The chances are they're not going to say, oh, I want a career in FM. Yeah. That's the industry for me. They're much more ambitious at that stage and they've got very different ideas. But the reality is these are the opportunities that are available to you if You don't become a scientist and disappear off to space, So, if you want a career that can offer you opportunity and success and financial rewards, and actually this is an industry that can support that. So I work a lot with those that in education, as they come out of education and they're looking at apprenticeships or graduate schemes or, what's the go-to in terms of the industries and sectors, where's the opportunities. So that's quite encouraging, I think.
I'll take my hat to you for doing that, because not a lot of people do. And engagement in younger people is what we need to do as an industry.
Without a doubt, if we don't get more involved in supporting these students, and showcasing the cleaning industry and all of the opportunities available within it, we're fighting for talent as it is. And everyone's in all industries are in the same position, but they're doing things differently to attract these individuals. For example, TikTok. How do you connect with these individuals? You've got to be very creative now.
What's the general consensus when you speak to young people and you mention the soft services, cleaning, FM industry? What's their initial view? They give you the eye roll.
They look a bit confused, and they're not quite sure whether that's what they're going to aspire to. Don't really see the opportunities.
And you can get it, right? You understand. I can understand that.
Absolutely.
Come in the cleaning industry. Like that. My first thought would be no.
Yeah, I'll take you on a walk around and you can see what our cleaners do. And it's just not the way people work nowadays. It's. It shouldn't be an industry that we fall into. I think we need to be very targeted in terms of how we attract these individuals, how we train them, and if we train them effectively, then you will retain them and you'll retain that talent. But I think the industry as a whole has to work a lot harder to make a difference, because otherwise we're in a bit of a crisis situation. I've met some incredible individuals, for example, people that have started their their industry knowledge because their father was in it years ago. And now they're in Asia managing a soft services portfolio. Nice. We need to hear about these success stories. Definitely. And understand what achievements are taking place. And I think we've just got to get better at shouting about it. And that's why these kind of situations, what you're doing here, I think is so valuable, because it highlights that. It's showcasing, what's going on in the industry.
I think a lot of people that can't sit in front of me are generally what I'd class as self-made, which shows that with the right attitude, determination, grit, you can go wherever you want to go in this particular industry, whether that be starting your own business, whether it be in sales, which, we mentioned again off camera before, some of the sales guys, the good sales guys in our industry are on phenomenal salaries, more than me as a business owner. There's so many. I think
the highest paid BDM that I know of is on 135,000.
Yeah, I believe it.
As a basic salary.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, they've got great experience, but that's a game changer. That's an incredible salary. Yeah. And in my experience as well, I think the cleaning industry as a whole actually offers more attractive salaries than salaries in FM, where it's managing a range of services. Yeah. I think we'd be quite surprised, actually, just where we stand, where this industry stands in comparison to the rest of the FM industry.
And we know through the podcast, speaking of the likes of Jim Melvin, things like that, the cleaning industry is a multi-billion-pound industry. So there's plenty of room for people to get into it. You mentioned about we're in a bit of a crisis stage with talent, and I totally agree with you. What do you think the industry looks like in 5 years' time from a talent perspective? In its current state. I don't mean if we have drastic change and all these various different organisations actually start pulling in the same direction. What do you think we look like 5 years down the line?
I think if we don't start empowering people on the front line, because ultimately they're our future leaders, if we don't start thinking creatively in terms of how we attract them into the industry, we could get, university students that need a bit of extra cash of a weekend, get them cleaning, great. Yeah. But then suddenly they know a little bit more about an industry and they can develop themselves within, but But I don't think we're doing enough of that. I don't think we're engaging with these individuals enough. And I think that, unless we start to change our behaviours, and how we, bring people together, how we provide a clear succession plan. Everyone has the right to that personal development plan. And employers have got to offer that. If you want to keep and retain and develop your people, that's the only way to ensure that they stay within the industry and work their way up the ranks. So I think that is really key. Your induction plans, how you motivate these individuals, what career path you can offer them is crucial. Once you get them in, you want to keep them in the industry.
Yeah. You've been in the industry a long time. Do you think it's changed much in the time you've been in it?
Yeah, hugely.
Yeah? Tell me.
Yeah, I think,
because I'm a bit of a negative Nancy when it comes to that. I think I've been in the industry 10 years, and I don't know if I've seen it change that much in 10 years.
I think it's changed massively.
Good. That's what I wanted you to say.
And for the better.
Good.
And I think it's been, I think for me, one of the most interesting transitions was a company that I worked with called Silicon. And, how they suddenly grew through acquisition. But the expectations of their managers went from one thing to suddenly, they were running P&L accounts, they were being held accountable for their own profit. And, and it just seemed like such a quick transition. And I think some of their managers were kind of caught in the headlight. Yeah. How do they move with that change? What do they need to do as individuals? And some of them had been in such a sort of safe, secure position for such a long time that didn't really, what's the word I'm looking for? They didn't react as well to change, but because it happens so quickly.
Tough area, like things like that though. If you don't know nothing about them and you're at a dead start, standing start, someone chucks a P&L when you've just been an operator and you're managing your cleaning team and going, actually, you've got to manage the commercial aspect of this contract now. I can remember when it first happened to me, and I was like, I remember who I asked. I asked a guy called Richard Marshall, who works for OCS. I said, look, I haven't got a clue what this is. Can you sit down and he gave me the time.
It's a big responsibility. Yeah. It's like managing your own business, isn't it? But I think, that particular company was so great from a culture point of view. They really, supported their people through that transition. And some people didn't quite make the grade, but, the majority of them did. And it was just really by giving them that support. And so for me, that was a really clear example of just how much the industry has changed and your clients' expectations. Now, you need to be a little bit more accountable than just, delivering a cleaning service. It's got to meet standards. It's got to be consistent, and it's got to be sustainable. You've got to make sure that, EDI is important, that your team feel supported and inclusive. That environment there's so much has changed. It's incredible.
You mentioned about Ingage training and some of the different courses that you maybe are going to look at. Is there anything particular in the pipeline you can tell me that you're going to look at different? Because obviously you're heavily focused on the sales by the sounds of it at the moment. Is there any other facets you're going to be looking at within the industry? Yeah,
so we do also offer, bespoke sort of training workshops. So for example, we've been to quite a few businesses now where, and it's actually quite, financially it's a better deal for them because they can bring everybody into their training. And that's what we've done. So for example, with one company, they pulled in their human resources department, their finance team, their operations team. Everyone came to the training.
That's good though, because then you're getting out of them silos that most businesses operate in, aren't you?
It just gave an appreciation of, what the rest of the team do and how they perceive, your responsibilities, and actually how they play a part in the success of an organisation. And it just created that team culture. So we do a lot of that. But we're also doing a lot of well-being work now, workshops. We've got some consultants that we're working with, where they sort of tune into the business, what's working, what's not. Ultimately, what we're trying to encourage is that employers now create a well-being budget. which is a huge ask, you know.
Putting money aside for anything, you know, is difficult for businesses. How are you finding that? Tough?
It's a challenge. It's a challenge. But, you know, I think that companies, employers are now realising that if you want to retain, if you're going to invest in that talent, you want to retain it. And you've got to be doing something that is different to your competitor in order to keep that talent. You know, you've got to care about your people. You've got to invest and support them. And look, you know, it's a stressful time. You know, we're post-pandemic. You know, we're all trying to get to a great place. You know, everyone's got pressure on them. So, you know, it's just taking that into account from an employer's point of view, and making sure that you're supporting these individuals inside the workplace, but also outside. Yeah. It's a big responsibility.
What's the end goal with Ingage Training? Where do you want to get it to? What's the plan? What's the wider plan?
The wider.
I'll sit across from you 5 years from now, and we talk about where the training's gone. What does that look like?
We want to be a training service provider that is taken seriously. That, you know, this is not just about financial gain. Yeah. You know, of course we don't do it just for love, you know, but we do, you know, both Jasmine and I are kind of industry experts. You know, we're passionate about our industry and we're passionate about making a difference. We would not have created this unless we could see a positive outcome for anyone that gets involved with it. You know, so we're seeing that now. So I think for us, it's to expand. You know, we've got a central location that we deliver our training to, or we travel to employer sites. But what would be an amazing end goal for us is that every employer in the industry uses our service as an induction. You know, let's get the basics right. You know, let's get the basics right, and then you've got some half a chance of making sure that your team are motivated from the get-go. Yeah. You know, induction plans are crucial. If you don't get that right, you very dodgy grounding.
What does a good induction look like in your view?
I think clear expectations of, you know, the employer, you know, what's expected within their role, the culture, the organizational structure, you know, who does what within that business, you know, what the CRM is, you know, training on that CRM, you know, how our site, you know, spending times like buddying, you know, people going out with, you know, people that have been in the business for a long time. You know, if there is a skills gap, identify that at an early stage and put a process in place to support that. I think it's just giving that individual dedicated time to adjust
to the role
and understand the requirements of the business. And that doesn't happen very often.
I think we, you know, probably been guilty of this, you know, always open and honest on there. You put people in roles and you want them to hit the ground running day one, don't you? And, you know, they learn all them bits and pieces on the way. And that's probably, like you say, that's probably not the best way to do it.
So how long would you, I'm going to start interviewing you now.
That's what we like.
How long would you give somebody to adjust and settle into their role realistically and honestly?
The honest answer is, and I say I'm always honest, is we would look to hire someone with some experience in the industry anyway, with the proviso that they would be able to hit the ground running. So we've been guilty as a startup. I have no business background, you know, hands up there. I say this on the channel all the time. So
you've learned by your own mistakes, really.
I'm learning as I go every day, and I'm fortunate enough in a position I've met plenty of people in the industry that are, you know, have been in the industry many years, like yourself, and I've learned bits and pieces from everyone as I go. I've never run a business before, and I don't proclaim to be the best at it. And it's something we need to get better at. All those bits and pieces you mentioned that are missing within most businesses are probably missing in ours. Mm. So when we employ people in, it's a pretty much, well, work alongside different aspects of the business. So they'll work with Sharon because she's our operations director. They'll work with me as sales, business development, commercial director, whatever you want to call it. They'll work with James and Don on the specialist side of things, and they'll buddy them up. But to be honest with you, again, it's something we need to do better. I mean, we try and get that done as soon as possible with the proviso, I would say, them being, right, you know everything, and you can hit the ground running. But the reality of that is, as we discussed off camera, we've made a few bad hires in our time, and you pay for it long term, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not an easy process, no. You know, because you if they come from the industry, you kind of take it as for granted that they know what they're doing and they understand what your requirements are. But it's a big adjustment, even if they're going to a different organisation, because culture plays a huge part of it. What do you do? Why do you do it? What matters to you? What do you do well? What do you not do so well? But I think also we need to start thinking about recruiting from outside of the industry.
Yeah.
People come along with a different thought process, a level of creativity, a fresh pair of eyes, and that could be so valuable. Yeah. And it also deals with our kind of recruitment crisis that we may be going through.
You hit the nail on the head there, because I can think back to, I think to Don specifically, because he's been in the industry the longest, say he's getting old now, the old boy. First thing he asks, have they done anything before? Have they been in the industry before? That's the first thing they ask. And if they haven't, so say we're recruiting for a cleaning operative, have they done it? Have they got any experience? I go, well, no, they haven't actually. Oh, well, and probably because that's how it used to be. But it's
a cost saving, isn't it? If they've got some experience, you're going to save some money. I'm actually doing a course now because, like I mentioned earlier, I've never done my A-levels or completed a degree, and that was always a bit of an ambition of mine. So I'm actually doing what is equivalent to 3 A-levels in education.
Nice.
So this is so interesting for me, to hear, how our behaviours and, the characteristics we have as interviewers and what we look for, and unless we change that behaviour in the way that we look at individuals, look at their skill set, how could they transfer into this environment, what could they bring to the table, attitude, thought process. We just need to move away from the norm and start embracing, people with a different background.
Yeah. And like you say, I think that'll give you some fresh ideas. We've certainly been guilty of that. Oh, right, let's look for someone that's got some experience. And I think that's probably a lazy way of cutting out that need to familiarise them with the industry. But if you've got a training program like yours, which there isn't another one about, because I've looked, then you can cut that out, because then they're integrated into the business. They start to understand the industry. And me as I'm not a trainer by any stretch of the imagination, so that's not my forte. So me trying to take some around and induct them into the business and show them different aspects of an industry they're not used to, that can be taken away with the use of your services.
How time consuming is it for you to take time out? And let's be honest, you doing, fulfilling that induction yourself, if you haven't got a HR team, that's costly.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be fully focused.
That's the one.
On that opportunity. And if you're not giving, portraying the best image in terms of that induction, you're not motivating that individual. You're not showing them the best career path. You're not truly engaged in that experience. And you're kind of setting the situation up for a fall, and that individual, and then their transition into your business. So I think it's an area that is quite undervalued with SMEs. Bigger companies, large corporate organisations, they do it a lot better.
They've got the various functions to support that, like you say, they've got HR, etc. Yeah, I think, I could think of a recent example of us in our own business where what you've just said exactly played out word for word effectively, and it didn't end well for us or them. It was amicable, but it didn't end well. And I think if we'd have had that process in place, it would have been better, or it would have been more structured.
And I think as well, and I definitely see this as a trend when I'm speaking to employers and supporting them. They kind of go into any new onboarding experience as, they're almost waiting for it to fall apart. They've been there before, they know how it's going to be. And, they're not looking at it positively. They're just waiting for it all to kind of crumble.
Yet we do the same thing over and over again.
It's the same behaviours.
Yeah, it didn't go right. It's madness, isn't it? You mentioned about some of the organisations that you work with outside of, your current businesses. And, I, from knowing you for a number of years loosely in the industry, you do lots of networking, etc. Is that a big part of what you do? Do you enjoy that side of things?
Yeah, I do you know what? For me,
you're well known within the industry.
I'm a bit of a social butterfly anyway. I've got to be honest. You know, I'll go to the opening of an envelope. I love going out, and I've got a lot of friends that, you know, have come from the profession, you know. So, you know, I've got some great relationships from the industry, and they continue to develop and, you know, and move on. But, you know, I love this industry, and I think that you can always learn different things by interacting with people. And, you know, when we recruit for individuals, you know, we are very passionate about not just meeting their expectations from a professional point of view. You know, we need to understand them personally as well. You know, that's absolutely key, that we understand why are you moving, what's made you consider leaving the organisation that you're with. You know, what is it you're looking for from a future employer's point of view? What do they need to do to support you and retain you? And so you've got to build that kind of personal relationship. So we know so many people from this industry, you know, and we've kind of diversed into other industries as well to try and bring talent, you know, into this industry. You know, FM is huge.
Yeah.
You know, and we could actually, you know, transfer that skill set very easily from one service to another. But you can only really do that through networking, I think. You know, you've got to be involved, you've got to understand, and you've got to kind of put yourself out there to learn and understand what's going on in your industry. Yeah. So I think you should get out there networking, Chris. I'm going to take you next time. You can come with me.
Yeah, I don't know. I struggle with it. I think from everyone I've spoke to on the podcast, they've all said the importance of networking, and I think I'm yet to fully embrace it, shall we say. Don't get me wrong, I've been on a couple of good networking events and met some fans. The podcast is a great way, because I go to events now and there's sort of that ice is broken already, because people feel like they know me, they've seen content, and it's a bit of a talking point as well. So it's easier. It's just, I don't know, just being trapped in a room for an hour with no escape. Like the Hill Club boat, that was a nightmare for me, because like you're on a boat.
You look like you was enjoying yourself.
I did for several reasons, which I won't indulge on the podcast. But no, it was good fun. I don't know. It's just like, maybe I've had some bad experiences with it, but everyone I've been to more recently, I've enjoyed, and I'm going to come to your comedy night.
You know, we've got the FM comedy night. You know, I do want to talk a little bit about it, because that was a big gamble for us. You know, I mean, I love event management anyway, but I've always done it on a very kind of low level, and it's always been family orientated. So this was a really big, you know, experience, taking myself completely out of my comfort zone, which I'm a big fan of. Yep. You know, I'm here today. This is so out of my comfort zone.
Michelle said she was particularly nervous before we started.
So nervous, you know, but actually you're right. It's not as bad as you think. It's the same with you in networking. Yeah. The FM comedy night is on the 15th of April. You know, we've run the event twice now. We've had 400 people attend both events.
So it's done well.
From the FM industry. It's been amazing, absolutely incredible. We've got, you know, professional comedians, and these individuals are kind of investing their time because of the charity we're supporting, which on this occasion is Trailblazers. They're a mentoring service for offenders between the ages of 18 and 35. Nice. We've been down to Brixton Prison, Aylesbury Prison, and it's incredible what they do. You know, these young guys, we're working with males, but they've kind of come from a really difficult background. And by kind of delving into the charity work that they do, there isn't a very strong support structure for these guys as they come out of prison. They're kind of doomed to fail in an environment that is so underfunded. Yeah. So no wonder, you know, they're kind of struggling. But, you know, I think everyone deserves a second chance, and that's what Trailblazers mentoring does. It supports them as they integrate back into society. We've actually had a couple of individuals that we've introduced to cleaning companies, and they've actually started to form, you know, a career. So again, it's looking at how we support these individuals at entry level. You know, they've got a very different background. You know, they're not going to be somebody that comes with strong references. You've got to take a gamble. But they are supportive from a kind of mentoring point of view. Yeah. So, you know, it's just another way we can get people into the industry. Yeah. But It's a great event.
Yeah,
it
where
really
people
is.
can get tickets if they wanted to get them.
Right, so it's on Eventbrite. So if you tap in the search bar, the FM Comedy Night, if anyone's interested in actually getting a ticket, you can email me. My email address is mbrightly@bridgerecruitment.co.uk.
We'll put that down in the description.
You can contact us on LinkedIn.
Yep.
You know, we're everywhere. Facebook, you know, we're TikTok, you know, so we're looking at all avenues of how we can promote this. But I mean, look, we've seen huge success. The money goes to the charity, and you know, hopefully it'll be another great event. You know, the tickets are selling. You know, it's we've got some.
Is it stressful to put on?
Oh, of course it is. Yeah, of course. Like it's the first thing I think of a morning, and the last thing I think of a night.
It's definitely stressing.
You know, you're putting your name to this, you're putting your brand to this. And look, I know it's an amazing event, but ultimately, you know, you're the critic. You know, you'll attend the event and see what it's like. But so far, it's been incredible. Yeah. We just want to raise as much money as we can for the charity. You know, and what it does do also is it brings people together in a very relaxed environment.
They're the best ones, aren't they?
Yeah, look, you know, there's no pressure. You know, it's a great environment. You've got great entertainment, and it's just a different way of networking. Yeah. So I think at some point we will explore other networking events. Okay. You know, so that's something else I like to do in my spare time, is think about how I can create networking opportunities for the industry. So.
Yeah, but more of them, the better, I'd say. And I prefer, you know, I've been to a few, they're very formal, you know, there's nothing else going on.
Why don't you like them, though?
I don't know. It's
do you go on your own, for example?
Yeah, maybe that's I'm generally on my own. And let's say there are people I meet, but like you say, I don't know, like the Hill Club and like the event you're talking about, there's something else going on. It's not like, right, we're all in a room, there's no ambience at all. It's, you know, just people talking, and, you know, you're sort of forced into those situations, aren't you? Whereas, you know, if there's a comedian on as well, if you want to take a break out of that, and, you know, you can at the end of the day. I enjoyed the Hill Club. I've been a couple of times now. Their boat trip was fantastic. But
I think networking is not an easy process.
No, it's not.
You know, you're walking into a room where, you know, you don't know anybody. You know, or you may know people, but how do you get to that point where you're having a flowing conversation with somebody? You know, it's a lot of people I know feel completely out of their comfort zone, you know, by going through that. I don't mind, you know, I can just, you know, get on with it, but that's just my character, and that doesn't faze me. Other things get me really nervous, like sitting here podcasts, talking to you for an hour.
Which I'm relatively comfortable doing.
Yeah, exactly. So we're all different. It would be boring if we wasn't, but... Yeah, I think, you know, looking at, you know, maybe taking someone along with you, so you're not on your own.
Adam, you're up.
Adam, that's going on your things to do list. But, you know, going with somebody, you know, reaching out to a few people beforehand to see if they're going along, it just kind of eases you into that environment. You know, I mean, when I was running the committee for IWFM, we started a networking event after the facilities show.
Makes sense, yeah.
And literally it was just going so well. I mean, the last event we had over 150 people attend.
That's good.
And there were so many people there that hated networking. But, you know, if you've got any organizer of an event should make sure that there are people on hand to support you in that process, to ease you into that networking process.
I know. I went to this is Lawrence Allen's This Week in FM, is it? This is FM or whatever. I can't remember.
This Week in FM,
And, he was very good at that. You know,
oh,
if he sees someone on the, you know, the outskirts alone, he will, you know, he'll take someone over and talk, and that makes, you know, that's helpful as well.
That's so helpful.
I think, like you say, maybe taking someone along, I think that's probably a good piece of advice to be honest.
And it shouldn't always be about business development, you know, it's not always about that. It's about that learning experience for you. You know, you could meet somebody that's your age. I mean, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking? You seem pretty young to me, Chris.
I'm pretty young. No, I'm 37.
But you know, you're quite young to have started a business that's been trading for a number of years, you know, and what I found by kind of running my own business is that, you know, you become quite sort of focused and shut off to what's going on in the outside world. And actually you could learn an awful lot, you know, by networking with individuals that have gone through a similar experience, you know, maybe finding somebody like a mentor from the industry. You know, there's a number of people out there that are so happy to give their time, you know, pick their brains, see what they did, how they did it. You know, there's such a learning curve through networking.
I've got a bit of a secret to announce about networking, that I have got my own networking event and you are sat on it right now. That is one of the good things about the podcast. I've been with, you know, people that are very high performing in the industry. And, you know, you build up a bit of a rapport with people like through, you know, I'm going to come to your comedy night where, you know, I'm sure we're going to speak more regularly now. We've sat down together and done this. So this is good. I enjoy this side of things. And obviously you think it would transfer over, wouldn't you?
But all the years that we've been in the industry, you know, and I know your name, I know your you know, your family, because years ago, you know, I used to work with OCS and they were strong members of the team, and I've known of your parents for a long time. But we've never actually sat and talked and had a conversation. Yeah. So for me, you know, that's a great experience. I've never done a podcast before, so I've learned so much from today. Yeah. So yeah, it's you're right. It's a different way of networking, but it's so relevant.
Yeah, you've been a natural. So I finish off with most guests. You know, everyone says business ownership is this great fun ride, and it's, you know, the best thing since sliced bread, and it is in many ways. So is there a particular high point in your career that you can remember that you could tell us about? Anything that really stands out?
I think for me, you know, a high point is kind of reaching the point that we're at the moment. Okay. You know, to have gone through all of the transitions that we have, you know, post-pandemic, and to still have a team in place that are motivated and committed and really kind of, you know, supporting them in terms of reaching their own goals. You know, I've got people in the team that have been for an awful lot this year, and their career, their job with us is kind of really important to their life, you know, and that for me as an employer is incredible. Yeah. You know, that you rely on us to keep, you know, you happy and motivated in all aspects of your life, not just professionally. So that's been a high for me, to get through the pandemic, to be in the position that we're at the minute, to deliver the service that we do to our clients, to our candidates, to have the relationships where people come back to us and they go, do you know what? You do what it says on the tin, you mean what you say, and you support and you invest your time and energy into helping the industry be a better place, you know, because that's what I'm passionate about. So I think, post-pandemic, where we are today and what we've got to look forward to really excites me. And I think that's definitely a high point, the position we're in.
Last question, last point. If you, with your 25, 30 years worth of experience, if you could go back and speak to Michelle day one in the cleaning industry, what would the number one piece of advice you would give yourself as a fresh-eyed youngster into the industry? Scanning 35 years of experience now.
There's a lot of experience. Yeah, brain's a bit foggy. But I think I would have invested in my qualifications earlier. You know, I think actually marketing, I would have probably invested in myself a little bit more where marketing's concerned, because I think marketing is a huge part of the business development process, and I didn't really see that coming. You know, I've worked, you know, in a time where you send out thousands of brochures, you know, to people's addresses, you know, and, you know, the exposure you can get for an effective marketing process now is incredible. And I'm already behind the time where that's concerned, you know. So just being a little bit more invested and interested in technology and you know, how it could have benefited my business. Yeah, but you know, I think that's really looking at the options around us, you know, maybe taking a few more chances, not being as cautious. Yeah. Maybe getting a mentor, you know, I think that would have been great for me.
I've always debated with that one. I think there's a few people I've spoke to about in the industry who I won't name. I don't know. I think that's maybe something for the next step. It's definitely worth having someone that's been there and done that and having a sounding board that you can speak to. Definitely. I'd advise that because it can be a lonely world at times, right?
Oh, look, absolutely. And you can make some costly, bad decisions, so to stop that process, to just give you a different way of thinking, could be really helpful, especially for someone that's got an SME, that's got that entrepreneurial skill set, doesn't quite know how to start a business. That could be very, very helpful.
Yeah, it can be a bumpy ride learning, by your mistakes.
Yeah, and it's not bad learn to learn, but it could certainly be more. I think if we had more mentors stepping forward to support business owners, I think that could be a great thing for our industry.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've run out of questions. I'm going to stop talking. Michelle, you have been an absolute diamond. You were fine. I don't know what you was nervous about. So thank you for coming on. Tell the audience your websites for both your businesses and how they can get hold of you if they want to.
Okay, so Bridge Recruitment, www.bridgerecruitment.co.uk. We're very active on LinkedIn, which you may or may not have seen us, but very, very active on social media. So Ingage is www.engagefmtraining.co.uk. But I'm also always looking for volunteers from the industry to support on events such as a careers fair, or mock interviews, or, helping us to engage with those at entry level. But also, hopefully we can start encouraging employers to be a bit more open-minded in the way that they recruit and who we can bring into the industry. Yeah. That's a big passion for me. Good. Let's do things differently.
Yeah, and that's what we've got to start doing in the industry. We'll put all the links to the websites down below in the comments. But again, Michelle, thank you for coming down to see us. I know you had a bit of a drive over from over the other side of the river.
Lovely to meet you after all these years.
I know. Just keep seeing my face on social media. That's it. You've seen it in real life now. Hopefully I didn't disappoint. So thank you as always, guys. As always, hit that like and subscribe if you're following us on YouTube. And if you're on your favourite podcast platform, make sure you also subscribe and start to leave us some reviews. We need to get some more reviews so we can get the podcast in front of more people. That wraps up today's episode. I will see you on the next one.